It doesn't always take a lot of money to get a lot of attention at a car show. Sometimes it just takes old parts with a lot of soul.
Spend all my money on pretty things, diamante shoes and all these diamond rings. Yes, I spend my money on these fancy cars, on a Jack in the Box and old trips to Mars. Yes,
This is the story of how a little A-100 van worked its way all the way from San Francisco to Louisiana and ultimately into the hearts and minds of the Mopar Nation. In the world of Dodge A-100 trucks, there are a few that have become larger-than-life hot rod celebrities. On the top of that list is Bill Maverick Golden's Little Red Wagon wheel stander. Next would have to be the radically custom-styled Diora show van of the 60s show circuit. And I would argue that the third would be Mopar Collector's Guide's radically chopped-top panel van. While far from the popularity of either the Little Red Wagon or the Diora, over the last 10 years, MCG's van has become quite the cult classic among the hardcore Mopar fans. There's never a show we go to today that people don't ask about it. The story of the MCG van really begins in Chico, California in the 1980s. A gentleman by the name of John Williams chopped the top on this van 6 inches, he Frenched in the rear antenna, and he welded the back door into a one-piece unit that opened from one side. And thank goodness he never finished that project. Unfortunately for John, he did the almost impossible. He was driving the van and it dropped 2 valves in the Slant 6. Very unheard of for a Dodge Slant 6 motivated van. He let the van sit for a while. Another gentleman bought it and it sat under a tarp in his place. And then finally Scott Silkwood rescued the van and started bringing it back to life. In 2009, Scott decided to bring the van to Mopar's at the Strip in Las Vegas, Nevada. And that's really when it became the MCG van. I'm really not sure if it was myself or Paul Wilson who saw the van first. He was shooting for me there, and I sent him out to look for cool cars. And I had seen the van, and I met with him mid-afternoon, and he had seen the van, and we came together, and we're like, dude, found this really cool van, and we need this thing, we need this thing. We had been looking for a mascot, a shop van for a while, and this thing just screamed MCG when we saw it. So Paul and I tracked down Scott, and we worked on him for a couple days, and we finally came up with an agreement by the end of the show, and it became the MCG van at that point. So here we were in Las Vegas, Nevada. We just bought a 1966 untested van, and we had to figure out how to try to get it home. The easy solution to that would have been throw it in the trailer and bring it home, and we'd never thought anything about it. But Paul didn't want that. Paul wanted to drive it home from Nevada. And all in my head, all I could think of was, oh my God, my towing bill is going to be $5,000 by the time I get this thing home. So I worked on Paul a little bit, and he was adamant he wanted to drive it home. And we had an event out in California that we were doing a couple months from then. And I said, look, Paul, why don't we just send this thing to California for a little while? We'll make sure it's roadworthy, and then I'll let you drive it back from there. So that was the plan I devised to try to hold him off a little bit. And I was hoping he might forget about that, but he really wanted to make the trip.
All right, well, Paul, he saw the van, and he ran for it. I ran away from it looking for a flight home. Paul was very, very excited about wanting to drive this thing from Vegas to Baton Rouge, and I think cooler heads finally prevailed, and we decided we were going to have it checked out before we took this long trip home with it.
Well, the van would eventually make it out to Los Angeles, California, to Picture Car Warehouse, where they took a good look at it and told us it would make it home. And they also spent some time putting the logos on the door and the rear panel in magic movie paint.
We left out of LA that night, expecting to take a 2 or 3 day trip home, traveling at 60 miles an hour for 1,900 miles, which I knew wasn't going to work. We had people on the way holding up the magazine out of their cars as they were passing us, giving us the thumbs up. They all knew the van. Paul was, like I said, real excited. He wanted to take every road off the interstate he could find that dead ended into the desert. He wasn't happy with me for not doing it, but I tried to explain to him our bones would be found 100 years later. And we were traveling down the interstate, and we got shuffled off onto some kind of, not a way station, but check your vehicle for people that aren't supposed to be in there. And we pulled up, and must have been about a half a dozen agents surrounded the car, wanted to know where Scooby-Doo was. I asked Paul just jokingly if he had his weed with him. He got all upset, but they got a good laugh out of it. We tried to get them to take some pictures with us, but they wouldn't do it. But they sent us on our way. We made it 3 days out, and started coming into Houston when the exhaust fell off. I picked it up off the middle of the interstate, tucked it back in the van, and we about asphyxiated ourselves coming home. I had to remind Paul he was dying anyway, so I mean, what did it matter? He laughed, and we kept on going.
I can remember Paul calling me really late one night. I think they were going through Houston, and he was screaming. I couldn't hear a damn thing he was saying. It was like, the van was like, what? And Paul was like, Frank's going to kill me. Frank's going to kill me. He doesn't understand. We're going to get asphyxiated in this thing. And he was freaking the hell out because the exhaust had fallen off, and Frank wouldn't slow down. And I think they were about done with each other at that point, but they kept on rolling. And by the next day, they rolled in the morning, and everybody survived that trip.
In the 1950s, a whole new concept was introduced to the North American market, which was the compact van. Now, we didn't bring out our compact van until 1964, but when we did, it immediately became the most popular and really the best vehicle in that market. We had the best capacity for cargo. We would carry the most passengers. It was ideally suited for conversions to camper vans. So we really owned that market for all of the 1960s. The van that's behind me is a 1967 Dodge A-100. This is identical to the original ones that were brought out in 1964. They're brought out in two different versions of a van, a panel side like the one behind me, and a window van, which we actually called a wagon at that time. So they're kind of classics now. People are collecting them, looking for them. There's whole groups out there with the wagon version, with the windows, the camper vans, that get together as clubs, as groups, to celebrate the A-100 heritage.
Well, Scott had the van looking really good the way it was with the Kragers. To make it truly MCGs, we thought we had to do something really special. And Paul and I came up with the idea of going the gasser route. And you don't have that many vehicles you can really make a gasser, but we thought this little chop top A-100 would be the perfect candidate for that look. The first thing we had to do to this van to make it look like a gasser was put a moon tank on the front. So I enlisted my friend Jimmy Thibodeau to do the fab work, and we actually started with the Dodge emblem in the middle. That would be the first thing that we put on here with the skull. We did that front and back. Then we did the moon tank and worked our way around and put some tabs where the bumpers were going to be, and worked all the way to the back where the Ilco vintage gas cap was fitted onto the van. We needed the right wheel and tire combination. The stance of any vehicle either makes it or breaks it. The perfect look on the back, we chose a ET Fueler wheel. It is a 15-inch by 8 wheel that's a classic 5-window pattern, but it has a very deep 5-window look. Looks like what you'd find on any given gasser in the day. We got the Dragmaster from ET also, and we got the skinny version, which makes it look like a spindle mount that you'd find on an early funny car or dragster. One of the main things that had to be done was get some exhaust on this thing before we drove it anywhere. So I thought of this idea of running zoomies off of it because we wanted a gasser look. It needed zoomies, but I wanted all of the pipes to work. So again, I went to my friend Jimmy Thibodeau, who's a master fabricator, and he figured out how to run a cherry bomb, reverse it back into these pipes, and make it a functional zoomie type setup coming off of the slant stick. Inside the van, we took out the fiberglass bucket seats and we put in some vintage look aluminum bomber seats. Pretty crude, but it kind of works with the whole thing we got going on. To steer this thing down the road, I found a Moon Metal Flake red steering wheel. I thought it was perfect for this situation. And Scott Dowse gave us a Mr. Gasket aluminum gas pedal, which was in the package, and I just couldn't bring myself to take it out of the package. So we bought a brand new Moon pedal to go in the van, and we put the other one on the shelf in the office. And one of our subscribers at Las Vegas brought us this baby little Moon pedal to match that for the emergency, not the emergency lights, but the bright lights, which I thought was really, really cool and really, really nice. One of the coolest pieces that came with the van was the Mr. Gasket shifter, which is actually a vintage piece with the vintage ball with the right pattern on it. It's actually a Mr. Gasket shifter for a van, which I don't know where you'd ever find one of these again, but it's definitely cool. This thing needed to have good tunes, so we went and we got speaker pods for ski boats, and we put a mount across and then mounted them to that for some good speaker action. But we needed more bass, so we went to SAS Speaker Systems, which was based here in Baton Rouge, and they make a nitrous bottle with a bass speaker in it. I don't think they make this anymore, but this was a big deal back in the 80s. So we found one of these here locally, dropped it in the back, and it looks pretty cool and handles the music well. Originally we wanted to put a surfboard on the roof, but it won't fit in the trailer with the surfboard on the roof, so we reversed it out and we took a surfboard and we put it on the inside of the van, and we painted it metal flake, heavy metal flake red, just like the steering wheel, to match. And the story on that surfboard is kind of cool. We used to run contests in the magazine to win free stuff, and one of the contests was to win a wing for your car, a factory wing for your car, and to enter that contest you had to send us something crazy. And the gentleman that won that sent us this surfboard and said that was his wing on his car and he needed to replace it. So we actually got that from a subscriber, which was cool. Painted it, mounted it to the inside, put a vintage belt to hold it up, and it's a great piece that's forever linked to the van. We wanted to make sure this thing was about having fun wherever we went, so we put some racks on the side so we can put skateboards on. The hope is to either fit a go-kart or a mini bike in here soon, so it goes on the road with us too. When Frank and Paul got back with the van, I had them sign the doors. Paul signed the right-hand door and Frank signed the left-hand door. And it was shortly after that that the theory was that we were going to bring this van all over the country and have all of our subscribers sign the insides. And the one stipulation that Frank and Paul said was, absolutely, we're going to do it, but no one else can sign the front doors but them. And we've kept with that rule hard and fast for them. After we got all the parts in the van, we got it together, fitted it in the trailer, and then we hit the road and we went back out to California, where we started this quest to start the signing and show this thing off across the country on our show tour.